They sent an ultimatum written in gravity. Admiral Jacoby Thorne stood on the command deck of the fleet carrier Arbitrage, his knuckles white where they gripped the edge of the central holotable. Before him, the system of Olaris spun in silent sapphire majesty, a picture of peace under sentence of death. A crimson lattice of energy impossibly vast now caged the entire system, a projection from the single monolithic warship that called itself the Hegemony's Will. It was a siege weapon of obscene scale, and its message was simple: surrender the planet, and its 30 million inhabitants, or the lattice would contract, crushing everything within its grasp into a singular, incandescent point. The countdown timer, a stark projection hovering in the corner of every bridge officer's vision, read 71 hours, 59 minutes, and 42 seconds. Lyceum confirmed their doctrine one last time. Thorne's voice was a low rumble, a counterpoint to the soft hum of the ship's inertial dampeners. The fleet mind's synthesized voice, calm as deep space, emanated from the air itself. Doctrine confirmed, Admiral. The Krayan hegemony has used this tactic 17 times. In all 17 instances upon rejection of the ultimatum, the gravity well was activated precisely at 0. There have been no survivors. They do not negotiate. They do not deviate. The AI's avatar, a simple pulsating sphere of silver light, glowed softly beside the Admiral. Thorne's gaze swept over his bridge crew. Tactical Officer Eva Rostova, her face illuminated by the glare of her console, worked with a focused intensity that belied the tremor in her hands. At the helm, Lieutenant Jian, a pilot of preternatural calm, kept the Arbitrage perfectly stationary against the void. This was Third Fleet, the Mercy Fleet, a collection of repurposed haulers, advanced surveyors, and dedicated mirror lattice ships designed not for conquest, but for de-escalation. They were teachers and builders armed with just enough teeth to make bullies think twice. Today, the bully wasn't thinking. They believe we are weak. Thorne stated the words, tasting like ash. They see our mission profiles, our history of non-engagement, and assume we will break. He straightened up, the faint scent of ozone from the atmospheric recyclers filling his lungs. They have made an error in their accounting. Rostova looked up, her expression grim. Admiral, their ship is a fortress. It projects the well, but its own defenses are layered. Point defense lasers, kinetic barriers, and a dispersed energy shield that our sensors can barely penetrate. A direct assault is improbable. Direct assault is not our way, Thorne countered, his eyes fixed on the monolithic Krayan ship. Lyceum begins spooling the decoy drones, full-spectrum emission profiles. Make them look, sound, and smell like our entire capital ship roster. He tapped a control on the holotable, magnifying the civilian convoy still huddled near Olaris's moon. They were medical transports, food freighters, and a single university vessel caught in the trap when it sprang. A jury of the innocent was now the hostage. First Officer Commander Valerius, a man whose stoicism was legendary, stepped forward. Sir, the Krayan will detect the drone launch. They'll know we're preparing a sortie. It could provoke them. Let it, Thorne said, his voice hard. Let them watch us prepare. Let them think we are about to throw ourselves against their shield like fools. He turned to Lyceum. I want every watt of our comms power focused on a single open channel to the Hegemony's will. No threats, no pleas, just a live feed of our actions. The silver sphere pulsed. An unusual strategy, Admiral. It reveals our hand. No, Thorne corrected. It shows them exactly the hand we want them to see. The deck plates vibrated slightly as the forward launch tubes began cycling the first wave of decoy drones, each one a sophisticated lie of light and energy. The game had begun. We would teach them the high cost of a closed fist. A young ensign in the civilian monitoring pit watched the feed from the university ship Stargazer. A child no older than 5 was drawing on a datapad, her face smudged with what looked like nutrient paste. Her mother held her close, whispering words of comfort, that the audio pickups couldn't quite catch. The ensign swallowed hard, the synthetic heartbeat from her biosuit suddenly loud in her ears. The stakes were not abstract numbers on a screen. They were a little girl drawing stars, while oblivion gathered outside her window. Thorne saw the ensign's distress reflected in a nearby console. He kept his fleet small, not just for tactical flexibility, but to ensure every soul aboard knew every other soul's name, or at least their function. It was a fleet built on empathy, a concept the Cryon doctrine seemed incapable of processing. They saw assets, we saw families. Lyceum. Thorne began, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Initiate the shimmer. Phase 1. Slaved decoys will mimic a pincer formation, but the real work is quieter. I want our 4 mirror lattice ships, the refraction, reflection, return, and reckoning, to begin their slow drift. Disguise their energy signatures as debris from the local asteroid belt. Maneuver initiated, Admiral. Lyceum confirmed. Their heat signatures are being masked by directed coolant venting, precisely mimicking the thermal decay of iron-rich asteroids. Thorne watched the tactical display. 4 tiny, insignificant icons began a long, graceful arc away from the main fleet, their movements calculated to be dismissed as random chance. The Crayon would be watching the loud, obvious threat of the decoy drones, their sensors tuned to the clamor of a conventional attack. They would ignore the whispers. A blind spot is a grave you dig for yourself. For hours, the standoff held. The decoy fleet, a magnificent phantom of humanity's naval power, executed elaborate aggressive maneuvers at the edge of the Crimson Lattice. The Crayon ship remained impassive, its silence a testament to its supreme confidence. The countdown clock ticked down relentlessly. 64 hours. 61 hours. 58 hours. The tension on the arbitrage's bridge was a physical presence, a tightening in the chest, a dryness in the mouth. Every tick of the clock was a hammer blow against the anvil of their resolve. They are not reacting to the decoys, Admiral. Rostova reported, her brow furrowed. They are holding their position, confident the well is their checkmate. The console glare cast sharp shadows across her face. Their doctrine is their prison, Thorne murmured. They believe in the absolute power of the ultimatum. It has never failed them, so they cannot conceive of a situation where it might. He felt the subtle thrum of the ship's grav plates under his feet, a constant reminder of the forces they sought to command. It is a poor strategist who only plays one game. Helm, bring us about. Slow drift toward the convoy, Thorne commanded. Let's look like we're consolidating for a final, futile defense. The arbitrage began to move, its immense frame gliding through the void with practiced ease. The civilian ships, seeing the fleet carrier approach, broke their calm silence with a fresh wave of desperate queries and panicked reports. Thorne ordered them all routed to a non-critical channel managed by a team of counselors. He needed his bridge clear. Lyceum, what is the Crayon's energy profile looking like? Stable, Admiral. The gravity well requires an immense and constant power draw. Their reserves are demonstrably finite, though still vast. They are operating at 72% of their maximum theoretical output to maintain the lattice. A seed of an idea began to form in Thorne's mind, a dangerous, audacious gamble. It was a strategy born of desperation and a deep understanding of his opponent's singular mindset. The Crayon saw the well as their weapon. Thorne was beginning to see it as their vulnerability. Their greatest strength was their only weakness. Commander Valerius, what is the absolute maximum energy load our mirror lattices can handle and redirect before the emitters overload? Thorne asked, turning to his first officer. Valerius consulted a side panel, his face impassive. The emitters are rated for a sustained 70 terawatt directional reflection. We can push them to 80 for short bursts, but we risk catastrophic feedback. The mirrors themselves can handle far more, but the emitters are the bottleneck. They would glow cherry red before failing. Thorne nodded, the plan solidifying. It was a razor's edge. Have the refraction and her sister ships continue their drift. When they reach their designated coordinates, they are to remain dormant until my command. No active scans, no emissions. Pure silence. He looked at the timer. 52 hours. Plenty of time for the seeds of deception to take root. A lie told in silence is the hardest to detect. He then turned to Rostova. Ava, I want you to start a slow, subtle scan of the lattice itself. Not the ship, just the crimson energy field. Use our most passive sensors. I'm looking for a harmonic frequency, a resonance point. Something we can exploit. Understood, Admiral? She replied, her fingers flying across her console. It's like looking for a single off-key note in a hurricane, but we'll find it. The hours crawled by. On the bridge of the arbitrage, the crew worked in hushed, efficient shifts. The scent of recycled air and hot electronics became the smell of their defiance. Thorn did not sleep. He stood his vigil at the holotable, watching the slow, silent dance of ships and probabilities, his mind racing through every possible outcome. He felt the weight of 30 million lives on his shoulders, a burden that would have crushed a lesser man. The ledger of command is written in sleepless nights. Lyceum's voice broke the quiet hum. Admiral, an anomaly. Officer Rostova has found a resonance flicker in the lattice. It is infinitesimally small, a wave pattern that repeats every 17 seconds. It appears to be a byproduct of the projector's refresh cycle. Thorn's eyes snapped to the tactical display. A flicker, a seam in their armor. He leaned closer, his reflection staring back from the polished black floor. Can we use it? Can we widen it? Theoretically, Lyceum said, its silver orb glowing brighter. If we can match the exact frequency and phase of the flicker, we could for a nanosecond create a localized pathway through the lattice. However, the energy required to project such a frequency would be immense and instantly detectable. We won't project it from here, Thorn said, a grim smile touching his lips. He pointed to the 4 dormant icons drifting in the dark. We'll project it from the mirrors. This was the fulcrum. Now they needed the lever. The civilian vignette from the medical freighter Healer's Oath showed a doctor trying to calm a burn victim, a young stoker from a freighter that had strayed too close to the lattice before its danger was known. Just breathe, the doctor said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The Third Fleet is here. They don't leave people behind. You just have to hold on. They always find a way. The patient's ragged breathing was a stark counterpoint to the doctor's quiet faith. Thorn watched the clip on his private monitor, the quiet heroism strengthening his resolve. They were not just defending a planet. They were defending the very idea of hope. Hope is the only fuel that burns hotter than a star. Lyceum, Thorn commanded, his voice ringing with newfound authority. It's time for Phase 2, the reflected gambit. Transmit the firing coordinates and the resonance frequency data to the mirror ships. They are to remain dormant until the final sequence. Then I want you to prepare a single unarmed probe. Its purpose is communication. Valerius frowned. A probe, sir. They have ignored all our hails. This one will be different, Thorn assured him. This one will carry a message they cannot ignore. It will carry the ledger. The countdown showed 41 hours remaining. Time was accelerating. The probe was a simple thing, little more than a thruster with a comms package. It launched from the arbitrage with no fanfare, a tiny dart aimed at the heart of the hegemony's will. It broadcast on all frequencies its message, not a plea, but a simple, stark presentation of data. It was the complete, unredacted history of the Crayan hegemony's 17 previous ultimatums. It showed the worlds they had crushed, the populations they had extinguished, the cultures they had erased. It was a mirror held up to a monster. We would force them to look at their own face. The probe did not get far. A bolt of incandescent plasma erupted from the Crayan warship, vaporizing the small messenger in a flash of silent light. But the message had been sent. For a few crucial seconds, the data had streamed. Did they receive it? Thorn asked, his body tense. Affirmative, Lyceum replied. Their internal comms network shows a massive spike in data traffic. The message was received and is being disseminated throughout their ship. They know that we know who they are. Rostova suddenly stiffened at her console. Admiral, energy spike from the Krayan vessel, it's not a weapon. They're tightening the lattice. The rate of contraction is increasing. On the main view screen, the crimson cage visibly shrank. The countdown timer on the screen began to accelerate, shedding hours in seconds. 30 hours, 25 hours, 20 hours. They were accelerating the reckoning. They're panicking. Thorn breathed, a sudden cold clarity washing over him. Our message wasn't for their commander. It was for their crew. We showed them the butcher's bill for their doctrine. Valerius looked grim. It seems to have had the opposite effect, sir. They're doubling down. No, Thorn said, his eyes alight with a fierce intelligence. They are reacting. They are breaking their perfect, rigid doctrine. They are making a mistake. He stood tall, the weight of command settling comfortably on his shoulders. He was no longer just a protector. He was a hunter. Lyceum, he ordered, his voice sharp and clear. It's time to open the ledger, signal the mirror ships, activate the reflected gambit, now. Brace for the whiplash. Across the vast emptiness of the Alaris system, 4 silent drifting asteroids suddenly vented their remaining coolant in a brilliant plume. Their dull, iron-hued surfaces cracked open, revealing vast crystalline arrays of impossibly smooth mirrors. They were perfectly angled, perfectly positioned, waiting for the light. On the bridge of the arbitrage, Thorn felt a powerful surge of energy as the ship diverted all non-essential power to its main projector. Helm target the lead mirror ship, the refraction, Thorn commanded. Eva, lock onto that resonance flicker. Lyceum, on my mark, fire a single concentrated beam of resonance energy. A key to unlock a cage. Ready, Admiral, came the chorus of replies from his crew. The air on the bridge crackled with anticipation. The final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. The arbitrage shuddered as a lance of pure white energy, precisely tuned to the lattice's hidden frequency, shot from its forward projector. It wasn't a weapon. It was a signal, a focused whisper in a storm of noise. It struck the waiting mirrors of the refraction, which in a perfect instantaneous flash angled its massive array. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath. The beam of light, now amplified and refocused, leaped across the void to the second mirror ship, the reflection. Again, it was caught, amplified, and redirected. From reflection to return, from return to reckoning. Each mirror added its own energy, sharpening the beam, increasing its power exponentially. It was a chain reaction of light, a circuit closing across millions of kilometers of empty space. The final mirror, the reckoning, gathered the full accumulated power of the beam and aimed it not at the Krayan ship, but at a single calculated point on the crimson lattice. For a single silent instant, a perfect circle of clear, untainted space opened in the crimson cage. It was only a kilometer wide, a tiny pinprick in the vast wall of energy. But it was enough. "Convoy is away!" Rostova shouted, her voice filled with triumph. "The civilian ships are accelerating through the gap. They're clear." The maneuver had been timed to the nanosecond. The civilian ships, pre-warned, and with their engines already at full burn, had shot through the temporary aperture the moment it opened. They were escaping. They had turned their cage into a gate. But the gambit was not over. The Krayans, stunned by the impossible breach, reacted with predictable fury. Lances of plasma and kinetic rounds now flew toward the escaping convoy and the suddenly revealed mirror ships. "The mirrors are taking fire, Admiral," Valerius reported, his voice tight. "Their shields are holding, but they're buckling." "They don't need to hold for long," Thorn said calmly. He was watching the Krayan ship, watching its power levels. The sudden panicked volley of fire was a massive energy drain. Added to the strain of accelerating the lattice contraction, the hegemony's will was bleeding power at an alarming rate. "Lyceum," Thorn said, his voice dangerously soft. "The convoy is clear. The first part of the lesson is over. Now for the second. Invert the mirrors. It's time to return their property to them." The bill was coming due. The 4 mirror ships, their primary mission complete, began to reorient. Their vast, shining surfaces turned away from each other and swiveled with impossible grace to face a new target, the monolithic Crayon warship. They were no longer a key. They were now a lens. Rostova's eyes went wide as she understood the Admiral's intent. "Sir, the Crayon ship is still pouring energy into the lattice. If we—" "Yes, officer," Thorn finished for her. "They have surrounded this system with a weapon. It is time we showed them what it feels like to be on the other side of it." He looked at the main view screen at the crimson energy cage that still pulsed with deadly intent. It was a monument to arrogant power. "They built their own damn cage," he said, the console glare reflecting in his determined eyes. "I'm just going to help them close the door." Their sanctuary would become their prison. On the civilian ships, now accelerating to safety, families huddled together, watching the unbelievable scene unfold on their view screens. The child from the Stargazer was no longer drawing. She was pressed against the viewport, her small hand leaving a smudge on the cold plasteel, watching the distant silent fireworks of her salvation. She saw the 4 new brilliant stars that had saved them. She saw the crimson cage that had almost been her tomb. "Admiral," Lyceum's voice cut through the tension. "The mirrors are in position. They are aligned to focus the energy of the lattice directly back onto the hegemony's will. What is the projected energy load on their shields if we focus the entire lattice on them?" Thorn asked. "Calculations suggest their shields will fail in under 4 seconds. The AI responded. "Hull breaches will occur in 7. Catastrophic reactor failure is projected in 12. The ship and its crew will be annihilated." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. The power to utterly destroy their enemy now lay in their hands. They had passed the test of ingenuity. Now came the test of character. The power to destroy is a temptation, not a mandate. Thorn looked at the faces of his crew. He saw the tension, the fatigue, the desire for retribution. It would be so easy to give the order. It would be just. But justice and righteousness were not always the same thing. The Third Fleet had a different creed. This fleet teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers, never by collars. "No," Thorn said, his voice firm. "That is their way, not ours. We will not be butchers." He turned to Lyceum. "Recalibrate the mirrors. I don't want to focus the entire lattice on their ship. I want you to focus just enough of it to collapse their shield and surgically sever the connection to the gravity well projector. We are not here to kill them. We are here to disarm them." Valerius looked at him, a slow nod of respect on his face. "A mercy blow. A lesson," Thorn corrected. "The final one. They need to understand that their greatest weapon can be turned against them. They need to be shown the cost, not just told. A teacher's hand is firm, but it does not strike to kill." "Lyceum execute," Thorn ordered. The 4 mirror ships made their final minute adjustments. They gathered the terrifying energy of the Crayon's own weapon, a sea of crimson power, and focused it into a single precise lance. But instead of an overwhelming wave of destruction, it was a surgeon's scalpel of light. It struck the hegemony's will not at its heart, but at its arm. On the main view screen, the effect was instantaneous. The Crayon ship's dispersed energy shield flared violently, sputtering from blue to a blinding white, before collapsing into nothing. A heartbeat later, the crimson lattice that had caged a star system vanished, its light winking out of existence as if it had never been. The projector, a huge spined appendage on the Crayon ship, was sliced clean off, sent tumbling into the void in a shower of sparks. The ultimatum was broken. The cage was gone. Silence reigned where terror had been. Rostova let out a shaky breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Lattice gone. Crayon ship is venting atmosphere from the wound, but their primary life support seems intact. They are adrift. They have lost their weapon, their shield, and their maneuverability. Lyceum stated, its voice flat and factual. They are, for all tactical purposes, defeated. Thorn watched the crippled vessel, a dark shape against the bright sapphire of Olaris. The countdown clock had vanished from their vision. The silence on the bridge was broken only by the soft hum of the ship's systems, a sound that suddenly seemed incredibly peaceful. "Open a channel to them," Thorn commanded. "All frequencies, unencrypted. I want everyone in this system to hear it." The reckoning was not over. It had merely changed its form. The comms channel crackled to life. At first there was only static, the hiss of empty space. Then a voice filled with a mixture of rage and disbelief came through. It was the Cryan commander. You dare," the voice rasped. "You violate the sanctity of the ultimatum. You will be scourged from the stars for this." Thorn stepped up to the main comm station, his face set like granite. "Your ultimatum is predicated on a lie." He said, his voice calm and steady, broadcast to the crippled ship, to his own fleet, and to the grateful civilians of Olaris. "It assumes that your will is absolute, and that your targets have only two choices: submission or annihilation. You were wrong." He paused, letting the words sink in. The deck plates beneath him were still the frantic energy of the battle, replaced by a profound and heavy quiet. "Today we have given you a third choice," Thorn continued. "The choice to learn. You have seen your own doctrine turned against you. You have felt the fear of being trapped by a power you cannot control. This is the first lesson. This was the school of consequence. We are the third fleet of the Human-Terran Alliance," Thorn declared, his voice echoing across the system. "Our purpose is not to conquer, but to teach. Your ship is crippled, your weapon is gone, and your crew is at our mercy. We will not destroy you. We will not enslave you." He leaned closer to the transmitter, his gaze fixed on the wounded Crayon ship. "But we will not forget. The ledger for your 17 prior atrocities is now open. A price will be paid, not in blood, but in balance." On the Crayon bridge, the commander stared at his screen, his face a mask of fury and confusion. The human's words were anathema to his entire worldview. Mercy was weakness. To be defeated was to be erased. This was something else entirely. "My crew is boarding your vessel now." Thorn's voice continued cold and final. "Not as a raiding party, but as an accounting committee. They will confiscate your records, your technology, and your history. We are placing a lien on your entire civilization. The debt would be paid in full. You will return to your people, and you will tell them what happened here. You will tell them that the age of the ultimatum is over. You will tell them that humanity is watching. And you will tell them that the next time a bill comes due, the interest will be substantially higher." Thorn cut the channel. The silence that followed was absolute. He turned to his crew, his expression softening slightly. "Well done," he said simply. The words were quiet, but they landed with the force of a tidal wave. A ragged, spontaneous cheer erupted across the bridge, a release of pent-up fear and tension. Rostova was laughing and crying at the same time. Valerius allowed himself a small, tight smile. Thorn walked back to the holotable, watching as human boarding ships, small and nimble, began to attach themselves to the hull of the crippled Cryan behemoth. The first cost of their victory was already being tallied. The mirror ship Reckoning had suffered severe emitter burns from the final focused energy transfer. It would be out of commission for months, its delicate crystal arrays needing to be completely regrown. A small price, all things considered. They paid in silver to avoid paying in souls. Lyceum's silver orb pulsed beside him. "Admiral, a new contact, a massive one, warping in at the edge of the system." The cheering on the bridge died instantly. Every head snapped towards the main view screen. A distortion in space-time resolved itself into a fleet. Not one ship, but dozens. And their energy signatures were identical to the hegemony's will. It was a Krayan battle fleet. The first ship had not been a lone actor. It had been the vanguard. Rostova's face was pale. "Sir, there are 30 of them, maybe more. Our decoys are spent. The mirror ships are damaged. We are exposed." The trap they had so brilliantly turned inside out had just revealed a second, far deadlier layer. The single ship had been a test, a probe to gauge their strength and resolve. Now the real hegemony had arrived to pass judgment. Thorn stared at the armada coalescing in the darkness, a swarm of predators drawn by the scent of defiance. His fleet was battered, their one great trick already played. The civilian convoy was safe, but his own people were now caught between a rock and a hard place. The Krayan had learned nothing. They had simply escalated. They had mistaken a lesson for a challenge. The lead Krayan ship, a vessel even larger than the first, opened a communication channel. It was not a voice this time. It was a simple text-based message that appeared on the main view screen, stark and absolute. It was one word: erasure. Thorn looked at the enemy fleet, then at his own small band of ships. He felt the familiar weight of command settle again, heavier this time, colder. The first battle had been a battle of wits, of strategy. This would be a battle of pure, unadulterated will. He had offered them a lesson in mercy. They had answered with a promise of annihilation. So be it. He straightened his uniform, the faint hum of the ship's life support, a comforting presence in the sudden, terrifying silence. He had hoped to teach them with numbers to balance a ledger. Now he understood. Some debts could only be settled with fire. His arc was bending from restraint towards a righteous, focused decisiveness. He had shown them mercy with teeth. Now they would see the teeth. "Lyceum," he said, his voice devoid of any warmth, a blade of cold steel. "Begin protocol Shattered Mirror. Divert all power, including life support, from non-essential decks to the remaining mirror emitters. Bring the convoy's long-range sensors online and slave them to our targeting grid. And tell the boarding parties on that crippled ship to find me the primary command codes for the Krayan Fleet network." He looked at the new enemy, his face a mask of cold fury. They had rejected the lesson. They would not get a second chance. They had refused the open hand. Now they would face the clenched fist. Commander Valerius's knuckles were stark white on his console. "Admiral, their opening salvo will reach us in 90 seconds. Our point defense systems can't track that many targets. We are outgunned 30-1. The hum of the ship changed pitch, a deep, resonant groan, as power was shunted from every corner of the vessel. Lights dimmed on the lower decks, and the air recycling system fell to a whisper-quiet emergency mode. "We are not outthought," Thorn countered, his voice a low anchor in the rising storm of alerts. "Eva, bring the convoy's sensor logs into our targeting matrix." They were passive, but they watched the Krayan fleet arrive for a full 3 minutes before the ultimatum. Their perspectives will give us a 3-dimensional firing solution. Rostova's fingers blurred across her screen, weaving data streams together. "It's messy, sir, but I'm building a preliminary topology of their formation. It's a standard Alpha Strike crescent, designed for overwhelming firepower on a single axis." The glare from her console reflected a grim determination in her eyes. "They came to hammer a nail, not to solve a puzzle," a small, tinny voice cut through the bridge chatter. "Arbitrage, this is boarding Team Alpha. We're inside the primary engineering block of the Krayan vessel. It's a mess in here, sir. Automated fire suppression is active, and their internal defenses are still online." Lieutenant Kalen's voice was strained, punctuated by the distant clang of metal on metal. "Your clock is short, Lieutenant," Thorn replied, his voice betraying none of the immense pressure he felt. "Find me the Fleet Command Nexus. Lyceum will guide you." "Understood, Admiral." Kalen out. The 90 seconds evaporated. On the main view screen, the Krayan armada unleashed hell. A wave of plasma torpedoes and kinetic slugs, impossibly vast, blotted out the stars. It was not a volley. It was an avalanche of manufactured fury, a brute force statement that tolerated no reply. The universe does not care for statements. It cares for physics. Lyceum now, Thorn ordered, executing Shattered Mirror. The AI's voice replied, serene as ever. The 3 remaining mirror ships, their arrays already glowing with redirected power from the arbitrage, flared into impossible brilliance. The damaged Reckoning joined them, its fractured surface sputtering, but holding. As the first wave of Krayan ordnance struck the mirrors, did not simply reflect. They caught the incoming energy, held it for a microsecond, and then shattered it, exploding each beam and projectile into a cloud of disorganized multi-vectored light and shrapnel. A defensive wall became a prismatic explosion. The void in front of the human fleet became a chaotic masterpiece of light and destruction. Torpedoes detonated prematurely, their guidance systems scrambled by 1,000,000 false energy readings. Kinetic slugs were vaporized or sent spinning off into harmless new trajectories. It was a shield made of pure chaos, a beautiful, dazzling testament to human ingenuity against brute force. But every miracle has its price. The Reckoning's array is failing, Valerius shouted. Its core is destabilizing from the feedback loop. They're pushing it far beyond redline. They know their orders, Commander, Thorn said, his jaw tight. They are buying us time. He watched the tactical display where the Reckoning icon was flashing a critical crimson. The cost of victory was being calculated in real time in glowing crystal and loyal human lives. On board the crippled Hegemony's will, Lieutenant Kalen's team moved through a corridor slick with leaked coolant. The air was thick with the scent of burnt circuits and an alien metallic tang. A Krayan defense drone, a spider-like automaton, dropped from the ceiling, its targeting laser painting Kalen's chest. A single, precise shot from his corporal's pulse rifle shattered its optical sensor. We're close. Kalen breathed, his heart hammering against his ribs, the sound loud in his helmet. Lyceum says the Nexus is behind this bulkhead. The door was a slab of reinforced alloy sealed tight. They would either open the door or die at its feet. The Krayan fleet, seeing its first attack utterly diffused, adjusted its strategy. They began to concentrate fire on the mirror ships themselves, hoping to punch through the dazzling defense by sheer focused attrition. Lances of coherent energy, thick as starships, began to spear through the prismatic chaos. Sir, the reflection is reporting shield collapse on its port side, Rostova called out. The Reckoning is gone. Her core went critical. The explosion took out a dozen incoming torpedoes, but she's gone. Thorn closed his eyes for a single pained second. He saw the face of the Reckoning's captain, a woman with 2 young daughters on Olaris below. He opened them again, his grief hardening into a cold, sharp weapon. There would be time for mourning later. Now was the time for balancing. The ledger demanded a response in red ink. Lyceum, is the feedback from the Reckoning's destruction usable? Thorn asked, his mind making a desperate leap. Affirmative, Admiral. The energy signature of its core breach was unique. I can replicate it. A focused data burst mimicking that explosion could be interpreted by their sensors as the loss of another mirror ship. Do it, Thorn ordered. Make them think they're winning. Make them overconfident. Eva, find me the command ship in that crescent. It will be the one receiving the most data, coordinating the attack. A deception inside a defense. A lie wrapped in a shield of light. On the Krayan command bridge, their tactical officer reported the destruction of a second human mirror ship. Their commander grunted in satisfaction, ordering his forces to press the attack, to hammer the remaining 2 until they shattered just like the first. Confidence is a cloak worn by fools in a hurricane. Got it, Admiral, Rostova confirmed, highlighting a larger vessel at the apex of the enemy formation. The Hegemony's judgment. It's their central node. Kalen, I need that nexus. Thorn's voice was a sharp crack over the comms. Now. On the Crayon ship, Kalen's engineer had slapped a thermal charge onto the bulkhead. Breaching in 3, 2, 1. A silent, incandescent flower of heat melted a perfect circle in the door, which fell inward with a heavy clang. Inside was a chamber humming with energy filled with pillars of pulsing crystalline data cores. "We're in, Admiral!" Kalen yelled over the shriek of alarms. "Lyceum, you're up!" "I am in—" The AI's voice echoed not just on the arbitrage's bridge, but in Kalen's own helmet. Their network architecture is archaic but effective, bypassing security protocols. It will take a few moments they didn't have. Another lance of Crayon energy sliced through their defenses, striking the arbitrage itself. The ship screamed, the deck plating shuddering violently. Emergency lights flickered on as the main lighting failed. Sparks rained down from a ruptured conduit near the helm. They were out of time and out of tricks. "Damage report," Thorn snapped, holding on to the holotable to steady himself. Glancing below to the aft engineering section, Valerius reported, his voice strained. "We've lost thrust on 2 engines. We are a sitting duck, Admiral." The Crayon fleet, sensing the kill, began to advance, their crescent formation tightening like a noose. They were moving in to finish the job at close range. On the view screen, the enemy ships grew larger, their weapon ports glowing with malevolent promise. Then Lyceum's voice, calm and clear, cut through the chaos. "Admiral, I have the keys to the kingdom. Full command access to the Crayon battle net." A slow, dangerous smile spread across Thorn's face. The hunter had just become the trap. "It's time for the final lesson, Lyceum," he said, his voice dropping to a predatory calm. "The one about turning a weapon upon yourself." He would teach them the meaning of a circular firing squad. "Do not shut them down," Thorn ordered. "Do not disable them. I want you to seize control of their targeting computers, every single one of them." Accessing fire control, Lyceum confirmed. "It is surprisingly easy. Their network security assumes no one could ever breach the command node. Their arrogance is the vulnerability," Thorn breathed. "Now give every ship in their fleet a new primary target." On the tactical display, the universe shifted. The dozens of angry red lines pointing from the Crayon fleet to Thorn's battered ships vanished. In their place, a new and horrifying web of light appeared. Every Crayon ship was now targeting its nearest neighbor. The perfect crescent formation had become a perfect circle of mutual annihilation. Their greatest weapon was always their own blind obedience. On the bridge of the hegemony's judgment, the Crayon commander stared in horror at his tactical display. His ship, which had been targeting the human carrier, was now locked onto its own sister ship to the right. That ship was locked onto its neighbor, and so on all the way around the formation. Every weapon was armed, every firing solution was calculated, every trigger was a hair's breadth from being pulled. They were trapped not by an external force, but by their own networked lethality. "Open a channel," Thorn commanded, "to their entire fleet, audio only." The channel opened. There was no rage this time, only stunned, terrified silence. "This is Admiral Jacoby Thorn of the Fleet Carrier Arbitrage." He began, his voice echoing in every Crayon cockpit, on every bridge. "You came here to erase us. You came here with an ultimatum written in fire. You have failed." He let the silence stretch, a weapon in itself. The heat from the earlier blast still radiated from a scorched bulkhead, a testament to how close they had come to the edge. "Look at your targeting screens." Thorn continued, his voice as cold and clear as the void. "I now control your guns. Your perfect networked unity has become your prison. At my command, you will fire and you will annihilate yourselves. Your doctrine of the absolute ultimatum has led you to this moment of absolute self-destruction." This was the final terrible mirror. "But we are not you," Thorn declared. "We do not deal in annihilation. We deal in ledgers. We deal in choice. He leaned forward, his voice a low, intense whisper that carried across the stars. Here is my counter-ultimatum. You have 60 seconds to power down your weapon systems completely. You will then power down your primary drives. You will sit adrift and await my instructions. He paused, letting the full weight of the situation settle upon them. That is the first choice. The second is that I give the order to fire. I will let your own doctrine be the author of your end. Choose. He cut the channel. The bridge of the arbitrage was utterly silent. Every eye was fixed on the main view screen on the fleet of predators held in a frozen tableau of their own making. The seconds ticked by, each one an eternity. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Valerius stepped forward. Admiral, what if they call our bluff? It's not a bluff, Thorne said quietly, his eyes never leaving the screen. Then it happened. One of the Crayon ships, a cruiser on the far side of the formation, went dark. Its weapon ports closed. Its energy signature plummeted. A moment later, its neighbor did the same. Then another and another, like a string of lights being switched off, one by one. In the span of 20 seconds, the entire Crayon armada powered down their glowing, aggressive postures, slumping into silent, impotent neutrality. Defiance had given way to defeat. A wave of relief so powerful, it was almost dizzying, washed over the bridge. Rostova slumped in her chair, covering her face with her hands. Valerius let out a long, slow breath. The faint, steady pulse of the ship's emergency lighting seemed like a beacon of hope. They have complied, Admiral, Lyceum stated unnecessarily. Boarding Team Alpha, Thorne said into the comms. Good work, Lieutenant. Return to the arbitrage. Copy that, Admiral, Kalen's weary voice replied. It's good to be heading home. The cost of this victory was still being tallied. The crew of the Reckoning, the damage to the arbitrage, and the heat-fractured, nearly useless arrays on the two remaining mirror ships. They had won, but they were deeply wounded. They had held the line, and the line had nearly broken them. In the days that followed, the Olaris system became the site of the largest, most orderly disarmament in known history. The Third Fleet, battered but resolute, oversaw the systematic stripping of the Crayon fleet's offensive capabilities. Their weapons were rendered inert. Their gravity well projectors dismantled their histories and records copied into the public ledgers of the Interstellar Concordant. A formal notice was posted on every public data network from the core worlds to the Outer Rim. It appeared on the news feeds, watched by the now safe civilians on Olaris, the families of the crew of the Reckoning, and the stunned populaces of the Crayon hegemony itself. By unanimous vote of the Concordant, the proclamation read, "The military strategy known as Ultimatum Doctrine is hereby classified as a Class A crime against sentience. The Crayon hegemony's charter is suspended, its assets frozen, pending a full accounting of its 17 prior campaigns of eradication." The precedent had been set. Thorne stood on the observation deck of the arbitrage, looking down at the sapphire sphere of Olaris. The system was quiet now, the silence of peace, not of dread. Lyceum's silver avatar materialized beside him. The last of the Crayon crews has been transferred to unarmed transports, the AI reported. They will be returned to their home world with the full, unredacted records of what occurred here, and the records of all the worlds they destroyed before. A lesson is useless unless the student is alive to learn from it, Thorne said softly. He watched as the two remaining mirror ships, the Refraction and the Reflection, slowly angled their great arrays. No longer burning with defiant energy, their crystalline surfaces, scarred and pitted from the battle, cooled to a soft, unassuming pewter in the gentle starlight. He had held the line between mercy and annihilation, and in doing so had been forced to wield the threat of both. To teach a lesson about the poison of an ultimatum, he had to deliver one of his own. The irony was not lost on him. Power was a mirror, and it always showed you a piece of yourself you didn't expect to see. He had learned as much as he had taught. A reckoning is not an end, it is a beginning.